This is the whole premise of Fast Like a Girl, is that there's a lot of nuance when we're dealing with fasting for women. And it really boils down to our sex hormones. If I could make it as simple for people to understand, men are very much driven by testosterone. We kind of know that, right? I mean, it's like not really like a surprise, but testosterone is made in a man and then goes up into the brain and converts into estrogen. Whereas a woman is driven by testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. And all three of those are made in the thecal cells of her ovaries and require communication from the hypothalamus and pituitary. So just that alone makes us a lot more complex. But here's what happens with fasting and where things go awry is that if we just look at estrogen and progesterone, and in the book, I call them sisters. I'm like, we got to think of them as sisters with like vastly different personalities. So estrogen and progesterone want to be treated very differently, very differently. So estrogen thrives with low carb, thrives with keto, thrives with fasting. If you're trying to balance your estrogen out, that's a great place to put your lifestyle efforts. Whereas progesterone's like completely on the other spectrum. She's like, you better raise glucose so I can be made. So she actually, our body will naturally raise glucose, will naturally make us more insulin resistant when we need to make more progesterone. And in that moment, whether you're a perimenopause, postmenopause, or a cycling woman, if you're not minding what the needs of progesterone are, and you're fasting at the wrong time, you're gonna end up with all the things that so many women saw: hair loss, muscle loss. We can chat about that a little bit. Trouble losing weight sometimes, a little different for everybody, but that's where the nuance starts. But the important thing is to realize that because we have a more complex spectrum of sex hormones, we have to fast differently.
I mean, just as you're talking about it, it almost seems overwhelming because you have to manage your testosterone, your estrogen, and progesterone, and men just need to worry about their testosterone.
Right.
And
Right.
and you've talked about how you have to fast differently at different times in your cycle to produce and to support those hormones. And I want to be really clear that when Mindy's talking about supporting progesterone with carbs, it's not the processed foods and the inflammatory oils and that sort of thing. So why don't you talk a little bit about progesterone and what foods you're talking about?
Yeah. Thank you. And just so that if you're like me when you're listening to new information and you're like, this is so cool, I want to learn it, I better write it all down. Two things can happen. One, you come back and you listen to this episode again, but two, it's all written out in the book. And I created something called the fasting cycle, which is a really cool visual tool that women will understand when they can go into these longer fasts and when they can't. So that's the first thing that I just want to make, because when I'm learning new things and they excite me, I'm like, oh my God, stop everything. I want to know this. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, we're not talking like that progesterone wants you to sit down and eat a box of pizza and a tub of ice cream. The best way I can explain this is with a cycling woman, and then we can talk about perimenopause and menopausal women. But to begin with, just for simplicity's sake, the first half of our cycle, it's called the follicular phase. I actually gave it a new name in the book because I'm like, follicular, luteal, like nobody knows what these are. So let's give them some fun names. So in the book, I call it our power phase. And the power phase is where we can power up on keto. We can power up on fasting. We can power up on exercise, like all the things that overachieving woman wants to do. And I'm in that. I call her the rushing woman. I'm in there, right? Yes. Let's just call ourselves out, just so there's no blame here. But day 1 to about day 10 of your cycle, your body's building estrogen. This is a power phase. Keto works great. Fasting works great. Then you move into your ovulation period. And I gave this a new name too. I call it the manifestation phase. because you can manifest a baby. You can also manifest a new job. You can manifest resolving conflict in your life. As you'll learn in the book, during this manifestation phase, you've got estrogen already at its highest. You've got testosterone at its highest, and you've got progesterone, a little blurb of progesterone. So because our hormonal superpowers are coming in this big way during ovulation, we have to do things different. 15-hour fast is great. We should not be doing keto as much. We should be focused on what I call hormone feasting foods. I lay them all out in the book. But the idea is really to bring glucose up a little bit, not a ton, but you don't want to be in that extreme keto, and you don't want to be fasting super long, so that you can break those hormones down. Then when we come out of that phase, we go into another power phase, and it's about 4 days, 5 days, day 16 to day 20 of a woman's cycle. You can go back into a 3-day water fast. You can throw your favorite keto meals at that time for hormones. That'll work. But ultimately, the biggest part of this whole equation is the week before your cycle. Day 20, progesterone's coming in. And if we are restricting glucose, if we're in a long fast, if we're running marathons during this time, that's going to tank progesterone. And once progesterone goes down, we have a whole host of problems. Remember that progesterone keeps estrogen in check. Progesterone calms us. Progesterone actually gives us quite a bit of intuitive sense. Like, there's so many wonders of progesterone. So when she declines, progesterone helps us sleep. Now you got a woman that's struggling. So that's really where, when we look at fasting, it is amazing for women at the right time of her cycle.